If you would like to listen to or download any or all of Power at Work's blogcasts in podcast form, they are available for streaming and download on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Overcast. Just search Power at Work on any podcast platform and enjoy all of Power at Work's podcasts. While you're there, two things we would like you to do. First, subscribe, and that way you won't miss any Power at Work podcasts. Second, please give Power at Work a 5-star rating, a like, a love, whatever is the tool that your podcast provider gives you. It helps others who care about workers and worker power to find Power at Work's content. They will be grateful, and so will we. Hello, powerful people, and welcome back to the Power Half Hour live on LinkedIn and published for posterity on poweratwork.us. I'm Seth Harris from the Burns Center for Social Change. The Power Half Hour brings you more voices, more news, and more worker power insights, and we do it all in just 30 minutes. I've got an expert panel of 3 guests who I'll introduce to you in just a moment. Our video audience can see our panel beautifully arrayed in front of them. The panelists are going to talk about the big stories and the biggest developments affecting worker power, workers, and unions. And they're going to tell us about important worker power developments that are coming in the near-term future that are going to arrive sometime when we're all hopefully in a different place than we are right now in our country. And then at the very end, we'll offer our guests a small token of our gratitude with shameless plugs and shout-outs. They can promote whatever or whoever they would like, and self-promotion is welcome and encouraged. And then, if you haven't gotten enough of us by that point, we will have overtime, which is a special period after the end of the 30-minute show, where our live audience and people who are in the Power at Work community can ask questions, and our guests will respond to them. I may jump in with an answer or two as well. If you're in the live audience, you can ask questions by posting them on LinkedIn. We will get to all of that. We'll get to overtime in about 28 minutes. Now, before I introduce you to the people who make you smarter audience, stay up to date with the Power Half Hour by following the Power at Work page on LinkedIn and by subscribing to Power at Work at poweratwork.us. All we ask for is your name and your email address. We will keep you updated on all the latest content on Power at Work. It's absolutely free to subscribe. And now let's meet our panel from snowless, snow-free Gainesville, Florida. He's the labor reporter for The Guardian. It's Michael Sainato. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Seth. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. And from New York, New York, where she traveled to escape the snowpocalypse that is Ithaca, New York. She's a first-time guest on Power Half Hour, but she was one of our earliest guests on Power at Work. She's I was going to ask Kate, have you actually retired, or they could talk you out of retiring?
I retired December 31st, and I came down. I came down here for a retirement party. That's why I'm here.
Oh, very, very well. Congratulations on your retirement party. She's the very recently retired senior lecturer and director of labor education research at Cornell University's School of Industrial and Labor Relations. It's Kate Bronfenbrenner. Well, wonderful to welcome you to the Power Half Hour, Kate.
Great to be here.
And from our snow-drenched and still occupied nation's capital, he's a great friend of Power at Work and the executive director of the Labor Heritage Foundation, among many, many, many titles. His business card is about 9 pages long. It's really unbelievable. It's Chris Garlock, everybody. A very happy New Year to you, Chris.
Oh, thank you, Seth. Great to be back with you. And Mazel Tov, Kate. Good for you.
Yeah, very exciting. Very exciting. A big loss for the ILR school, but
Indeed.
A big gain for Kate. All right, on to topic number 1, panel. We're going to start with you on this one, Michael, just give you a heads up. So looking over your shoulder or in the rearview mirror, tell us what was the most important or the most interesting development or the biggest story affecting workers, unions, and worker power over the last couple of weeks?
I think by far that has to go to the economic blackout in Minnesota. Obviously, it wasn't just labor unions involved in this, but you had local, state, and national unions really providing vehicles to kind of organize that day of action, that day of protest, and something that I don't think has been seen in years and years and decades in this country, and it's really really interesting to watch it kind of pop up organically from just a press conference with community and faith leaders and local union leaders to how big it was, and then spreading to solidarity actions across the country. And I think it was really a testament to worker power, how powerful unions can be, especially when there's not necessarily there's a leadership or institutional vacuum. So it was people leading and organizing those protests. It was nothing else. I know that the right wing likes to say that there are paid protesters, and it must be someone pulling the strings behind the scenes, but really it was just communities and labor unions as part of those communities really coming together to kind of organize and develop it. And they're still doing it. They're still leading on kind of the opposition to rein in the abuses that we've been seeing from the Department of Homeland Security and ICE over the past few weeks.
Right. And so do you have a sense, so this was the economic blackout that happened in Minneapolis and in other parts of the country in support of Minneapolis and solidarity with Minneapolis in response to the occupation of Minneapolis by ICE and the Border Patrol, and the violence that they have brought to the city, that those two agencies have brought to the city. Do you have a sense of how widespread the blackout was, sort of numbers of people, including union members, who were participating? Do you have any sense of that, Michael?
It's hard to kind of put a sense in that. So what we saw was, I think, over 1,000 local businesses shut down. For legal reasons, the labor unions couldn't say we're outright going on strike. For unions that represent like healthcare or emergency services, legally they couldn't do that. But I saw some unions say, if you're going to take a day off, just call out on a sick day, kind of in a legal way to get around that. But we saw the pictures, just thousands of people marching, and it was, I think, negative 10 degrees in Minnesota. I think that was historic and unprecedented, and so it was significant. I haven't seen numbers yet. I have seen last week there was just a report. I think North Star Policy Action is the group that put on how much this ICE surge in Minnesota is costing taxpayers millions and millions of dollars, and it's having just negative economic impacts.
Yeah. All right, Kate, we're looking back over the last couple of weeks. What is the biggest story, the biggest event, the biggest worker power thing that you have seen over the last, let's call it since the beginning of the year?
It is without question what happened in Minneapolis. I will talk about something else too, but the number I heard was 50,000, which with wind chill down to minus 45 is pretty amazing. And that's the people who are in the streets. That's not even the people who stayed home.
Yeah.
So one of the stories that is not getting as much coverage are all the nurses who are striking right now. We have in the West Coast, we have Kaiser, huge numbers of nurses on strike at Kaiser. And in New York, we have NYSNA at the three biggest hospital chains. So we have
the New York, just for the uninitiated, that's the New York State Nurses Association, right, which is on strike at three hospital systems in New York City.
Right, Mount Sinai, Presbyterian, these big hospitals. And they're on strike in deep snowdrifts, very cold. Of course, the Kaiser strike, they're not they're not on strike in snowdrifts, but it's a very large strike, and the second time they've gone on strike, this year. And we also are seeing nurses. We've seen nurses were on strike in Pennsylvania, and nurses are organizing. They're organizing. They're organizing in big hospitals, and we haven't seen big hospital organizing in a long time. Organizing in hospitals in Florida, Pennsylvania, and recently in Ithaca, New York. And these nurses are organizing on staffing and safety and on just general patient care issues, and feeling like they are not able to deliver the kind of care that they want. And they're making gains. They're not only winning elections, but they're getting first contracts. And so this is interesting because hospital organizing really declined, and we were seeing more nursing home and home care. And so to see the biggest hospital corporations being taken on by unions, and the unions winning, is very significant. And it's no accident that SEIU and National Nurses United are two of the leading unions involved in Minneapolis in the strike, and speaking out all across the country about ICE. So I think that nurses are out there, and that's very important. And of course, we just had the death of a nurse, which is rallying nurses, the murder of a nurse, which is rallying nurses even more.
Absolutely right. So I just want to ask Kate, my recollection from the Labor Action Tracker, which the ILR School puts together with the University of Illinois Labor and Employment Relations School, is that nurses are among the leading contributors to strike actions in the the how do you explain
Absolutely.
that?
So
I mean, you've
nurses,
looked at this issue.
nurses and teachers, and they also organize. And I think that it's because they are organizing, whether it's teachers or nurses or social workers, they are organizing over broader issues rather than themselves. They're organizing. They care about their patients. They feel like they're not able to do the job that they were trained to do, and they do not want to give substandard care to their patients. But it's also the corporatization of healthcare. If you're making a profit in healthcare, you're doing something wrong. The only way you make a profit in healthcare is cutting wages and cutting services, and that's what healthcare corporations are doing. And so nurses see this. Staffing is cut, services are cut, and they have standing up, and they've been standing up for as long as they were able to organize. And they didn't get the right to organize till 1974, and when
Right.
they did, you saw this burst of organizing.
Yeah. All right, Chris Garlock. Well, the bar is really high on this show. Wow, we're just on our first question. All right, look backwards over the last couple of weeks. Tell us what's the biggest story, the biggest development, the thing that our audience really needs to know happened.
I knew batting cleanup with these guys was going to be a mess, but actually, no, I am in complete agreement with both of them. It's Minneapolis and Minnesota. I only have a couple of things to add. One is it was a general strike. It was a general strike, and Minneapolis has a proud tradition of general strikes. And businesses closed, people didn't shop, workers stayed home, they called in sick. Unions, they did encourage work stoppages, and also people were just helping each other. People who were not necessarily engaged in the day-to-day stuff with ICE were, and there were businesses putting up signs, who you wouldn't necessarily expect to be supporters. People have had enough. There's a great quote from Robert Reich that I saw where Robert said it could be a model for what the nation as a whole does in coming months to repudiate the Trump dictatorship. And I have to agree.
Okay, you want to stop there? You want to leave it at Minneapolis, or do you want to add anything else in?
I suspect. I mean, this is now doing a little crystal ball stuff here.
No. That's the next question. No jumping ahead. There's no jumping ahead on the Power Half Hour, Chris. That's the next question.
You loaded up with the pitch, bro.
All right. Well, then that's a great segue into topic number 2. So, guests, let's get out our crystal balls. We're going to look into the future. Now, we're not looking at 2056. we're looking at the next few weeks, the next few months, maybe the next few years. What will be, and Kate, I'm going to start with you on this one, what will be the most important story or development or innovation or event affecting workers, worker power, and unions in that near-term future? Kate.
I think that the most important thing will be whether unions can once and for all understand that they need to let go of the regulatory state as their safety net, because it's not there for them, and they're going to have to learn how to use their power without relying on the NLRB and the courts, but on their power in the community, their power globally with their allies around the world, and go in the streets, and the development that we could hope for is this talk about having this 2028, getting all the contracts to end at the same time. But between now and then, there would have to be a great deal of building alliances and coalitions on the issues that really matter. And taking on ICE is exactly one of those things, protecting the rights of immigrants. The fact that many national unions have been very quiet up till now, and many still are, is a travesty. And they're leaving behind the heart of the labor movement, which is the immigrant workforce. And so labor has to build those alliances. They have to stand up and fight. They will take terrible risks. Labor taking on controversial issues is scary for unions with big treasuries, but that's what it's going to take. And it's going to be a very different model of organizing and bargaining, and it's going to need to be focused much more on the broader issues that concern workers, not just in this country, but around the world. And it's going to mean saying that the U.S. is wrong in what it's doing to the world and to its own citizens.
So this is, Kate, I think that's a valuable contribution to this question about what comes next. Since the NLRB was rendered essentially ineffective and is now going to be a battering ram to keep workers from organizing, not to help them to organize, and a battering ram against collective bargaining, not in favor of collective bargaining, the question really is what happens next. And your colleague Gali Rakabi and Alvin Velasquez, who's a friend of the blog, and a bunch of other people are sort of looking at state law as a possible substitute for federal law. But you're talking about an entirely different approach, a grassroots, in the streets, public-facing effort that really relies on pure power in order for workers to be able to succeed. Is that fair?
I think, I appreciate, and I have these discussions with Gali, and all the time I have them, but that would be saying we're going to give up on workers in red states, because that state legislative policy only applies to blue states, and only certain blue states. And I don't think we can afford. Corporations aren't limited to blue states and red states, just like they're not limited to the U.S. And so if you're going to build worker power, you can't do it state by state. You have to do it more broadly. So yes, see what you can do to protect workers' rights through the states. But if you're really going to take on capital, you have to do it more broadly, and you have to use your power in the workplace, your power in the community, both locally, nationally, and globally.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, Chris, you prematurely pulled out your crystal ball, but now is the time. Now is the time. I want you to look forward weeks, months, years, whatever you prefer. What's coming? What's the big development, or the big event, or the big thing that's out there that our audience should know about?
I mean, it's never too early to pull out the crystal ball, Seth. So a couple things, and they're all sort of related, right? Where I was starting to go earlier was that I think we're going to see more general strikes. And I think it actually ties into a case talking about with unions and the problems with the NLRB, which is a lot of workers are just saying, well, the hell with this. We're just going to organize our union anyway, right? We're just going to get organized. We're going to act like a union. We're going to be a union. And I think people are going to see what happened in Minneapolis, and they're fed up with it, and they may not be in a union. They may not know what a general strike is, but they're going to say, that's enough. We're going to close this business. We're not going to go to work. Specifically at the Labor Heritage Foundation, we're always, as you know, looking for the art. Where's the art? And I love, Seth, when labor art pops up that we had no idea. Like, I didn't know that there was such thing as a Minneapolis Brass Solidarity Band until it popped up, in some of the feeds, and they're at these demonstrations. Now, they've been doing stuff for years, going back to the assassinations earlier. In Minneapolis, right? But they've been doing this for years. I just found out this week, because we put it out in our newsletter about the Minneapolis Brass Solidarity Band. I say, hey, is there anything else like this? It turns out, Kate, I don't know if you've seen these, but there's something called the Rude Mechanical Orchestra, which does a lot of labor stuff, and they're fabulous. We're going to have them on the show. And then we just found out this play, The Brick and the Bible, which is in St. Louis. You want to go to St. Louis, Seth? We're going. I got to get to St. Louis. The Brick and the Bible is going to be next month, 1933 Funston Nut Strike, which Kate probably knows about, but I knew nothing about. 1933, Black women organized with white workers as well to fight low wages, unsafe conditions in 1933. And from the folks who wrote the play in St. Louis, that kind of discrimination is still happening 100 years later. So I'm looking for more, and if anybody knows, please let Seth know and he'll pass it on. I want to know more about, what are the local art things that are popping up. It's great. It's exciting.
Yeah, that is really, really exciting. I happen to have a brother in St. Louis, so you got to be careful about what invitations you extend. And I had not heard about the brass band. How are they participating? What does that look like in a situation like what we're seeing in Minneapolis?
First of all, they're just fabulous. They're this brass band. It's like a pickup thing, right? I mean, sometimes it's the full band, sometimes it's just a couple of folks. But imagine that marching brass band that we've always all seen, except they're doing like labor stuff, and are also, a lot of times, picket lines or these kind of things. They can be, sort of these static things. But you add a brass band, and all of a sudden, people are, and especially with the cold that they have there, you got to keep moving, and so it just adds. It's the same thing with the folks in New York, the Rude Mechanical Orchestra, which, by the way, I just love the name. I just would not have thought of them in this context. But it just adds a whole. To your point, it's fun, but it's serious, right? And it just makes it both serious and a party, and something that people feel like, I could be part of that. I can. What was it that Emma used to talk about, being able to dance to it? Well, you can definitely dance to the Brass Solidarity Band. They're fabulous. They really are. That's great.
And yeah, music is gas in the tank of the solidarity movement. There's no question about it. I love that. All right. Wow, we're setting the bar high for our last person in each of these questions. Michael, what's coming in the future? I mean, you're reporting on all of this stuff all the time, and people are telling you things that you're not necessarily putting in the Guardian. What do you think is coming in the next few weeks, next few months, next few years that everybody needs to know about?
I think it really comes to how the labor movement as a whole kind of responds and handles what the Trump administration is doing, has been doing, and will, what they decide they will focus on in the future. And a lot of these fights, the attacks on labor unions, the attempts to get rid of collective bargaining agreements for, a million federal workers, those are still ongoing in the courts. How unions will respond to, these sieges on communities in Minneapolis. They're doing it in, Lewiston, Maine, and even though I think public opinion has kind of turned. The Trump administration is really focused on pursuing this anti-immigrant policy agenda, and part of that is an attack on the labor movement. Like labor unions rely on consist of immigrant workers, or people who live with immigrants, work with immigrants. These are co-workers, these are family members, these are friends. I think it was a crazy year, and I think we're still in for the next few years are going to be just as crazy. This month feels like a year already.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It feels like we're ready for 2027 already. I couldn't agree with you more. Okay, panelists, audience, we have arrived at our third and final topic. It is time for shameless plugs and shout outs. Each guest will get a short amount of time to plug or shout out anything or anyone they would like. Chris Garlock, you're going to start us off. What is your shameless plug or shout out?
Well, you are going to love this, Seth. I am pleased to announce voting is now open for the 2026 Labor Grammys. Which
yeah, baby. I love it. Labor Grammys. Fantastic.
And Seth is particularly excited because the Labor Grammys originated right here on Power at Work, and Seth was generous enough to pass that off to us at Labor Heritage Foundation, and we are shamelessly running with it. We just opened voting last night, Seth. It only goes through next Monday night at midnight, and so you can go vote at our website, laborheritage.org. We've also got our playlist up at our YouTube page, Labor Heritage Foundation. And it's a great thing that you started, Seth. And again, looking for the art, looking for the fun, looking for the music. And when we shake these branches, it's just amazing the stuff that falls out. The songs, some of them we've heard before, and a lot of them we haven't. So check them out and vote. We'd love to see what people think. And then on our show next week in the Labor Heritage Power Hour, we will feature the winning song as well as some of the nominees as well. But thanks again to this show, and Seth, to you for starting this and then passing it off. We really appreciate it.
I'm so excited that the Labor Grammys are living on, and I'm embarrassed to say I have not yet voted. So right after we're done with the Power Half Hour, I'm going to vote, and I'm ready to tell people I'm voting for the Dropkick Murphys. I just am. I love the Dropkick Murphys. That's where I'm going. All right, Michael Sainato, what is your shameless plug or shout out?
I don't really have one other than read my work and my colleagues' work at The Guardian. We have and are continuing to cover the latest big events, especially ones involving or impacting workers in the working class in the U.S.
Absolutely, but I'm going to force you to expand your shameless plug or shout out. So Michael is not just in the pages of The Guardian. It's not pages anymore. I guess maybe web pages.
Online.
Yeah, it's online. But Michael, you're also on social media. So where can people find you on whatever social media channels you use? We don't want to shout out any particular one because we hate some of them. But where can people find you on social media?
Most often lately on Blue Sky. I haven't used X in over a year. I haven't migrated to Instagram. Don't really use TikTok. Facebook still use it, but it's kind of useless. So
yeah. Absolutely. And what is your handle on Blue Sky?
Sainato1.
Sainato1 at BSKY, blah, 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 blah. Just search Michael Sainato on Blue Sky. All right, Kate Bronfenbrenner, what is your shameless plug or shout out?
Well, as I told you, this weekend, on Saturday night, I was at a retirement party that was my former students who, from all over the country over the last 40 years, who have all gone to work in labor and social justice. And I want to give a shout out to all these young people, and some of them aren't so young anymore. And I'm so proud of them. And they are what gives me hope in this time of darkness. And they're the ones that are pushing their unions to do the right thing and their communities to do the right thing. And so that it's the young people in the movement are really my hope.
Yeah,
the other thing I want to say, I just want to add one more thing, is that, as some of you know, for the last 30 years, I've run a summer school teaching unionists and workers and community members how to research capital, strategic corporate research summer school. I with my retirement, I moved it to CUNY, and it is now Stephanie Luce at CUNY and Aaron Brenner are carrying it on, and anyone who's interested and wants to figure out how to take on your company and to really run this kind of campaigns, we need I urge you to go to the CUNY Labor School site and sign on.
Yeah, big fan of the CUNY Labor School, the second best labor school in New York State, in my humble opinion. Audience, stick with us if you can. We're going to begin the Power Half Hours overtime in just a minute. But right now, for Kate Bronfenbrenner, Michael Sainato, Chris Garlock, and our producer, Ayush Kanvilkar, thank you for joining the Power Half Hour. Stick around for overtime, but for right now, class is dismissed. Okay, guests, take a breath, take a sip of something if you'd like. We're going to relax a little bit, but we're going to move on to overtime. Live audience, this is your chance. If you would like to ask a question of this elite panel of experts on labor and worker power issues, this is your chance. Go to LinkedIn, go to the Power at Work page on LinkedIn and post a comment on this Power Half Hour, and Ayush will go over there. He's watching the LinkedIn page very, very closely right now. This is your opportunity to ask whatever questions you have, and we will do our best to answer them. We're going to go as long as there are questions, and then we will simply sign off. We'll only go at most another half hour. Okay. So let me, we have some questions that came by email. I think that this is one of them. It's about Minneapolis. Let me see. Oh yeah, let me. Well, you know what? I'm not sure that we did answer this question directly, so let me raise it. So here's from one of our member of the Power at Work community. I am absolutely heartbroken and outraged that ICE killed a healthcare worker in Minneapolis last week, one day after a general strike that was all about stopping these hateful acts. I actually think it was the Border Patrol that killed Alex Preddy. Alex Preddy was a union member. Is there more that unions should be doing to stop the government oppression in Minnesota and elsewhere? Anybody want to jump in on that? Michael or Kate? Chris? Kate, go ahead.
There's unions are starting to do it, but unions need to go to their employers and make this part of it, that their employers say that they're not going to be supporting and funding these major corporations who are giving Trump all that money. And we saw that already. We saw a number of companies that decided that not just to shut down in Minneapolis, but also that they are, withdrawing their whatever they do to cooperate with ICE. But that there needs to be much more of that. And unions need to use their bargaining power. And of course, when you use your bargaining power, that means there's something else you might not be fighting that you decide to fight on this. This should be the central issue for every union. But also unions, the national unions need to speak up and worker to worker, educate their members why this matters. And that's not happening. And that needs to happen in every union in this country.
Yeah, I think the National AFL-CIO has been pretty good about leaning forward on this, and some of the unions have been like SEIU has been very forward-leaning on these issues, and a bunch of others, most of whom have undocumented workers among their members, or certainly family members, and others. Unite Here, for example, has been very outspoken. LIUNA, I think, has been quite aggressively outspoken on these issues. Michael, you're in conversations with union leaders about this kind of stuff, and I don't want you to betray any confidences, particularly if I don't want you to tell any, throw any names out or quote anybody. Do you have the sense that there is more to come from the labor movement on the immigration issue, on what's happening in Minneapolis, on ICE and CBP?
I think so. So AFGE last night, they put out a statement calling for the Trump administration to, if Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller don't resign, to fire them, which is pretty strong. And National Nurses United, the largest nurses union in the country, they're organizing events around the country this week in memory of Alex Preddy and all the other victims of ICE killings and ICE shootings, and they've called for abolishing ICE. So you've seen some unions take the step and saying this is, what needs to happen. Calling for abolishing ICE, calling for meaningful reforms, more so than I think what we've seen from elected officials. And I think unions have and need to be steps ahead of what we've seen from elected officials, because they are following public opinion, they're following people, they're not going to call on what needs to be done. So, but I think there's it's fast moving, but I definitely think there needs to be more coming from labor unions, especially ones where they have a lot of impacted members and they're just not commenting or not putting out statements or not organizing around these issues.
Yeah. I think the member education point that Kate made is a very, very important one. It's not surprising Kate made it as an educator, but I would put it this way. Members trust their unions more than they trust the news, the media, more than they trust politicians, more than they trust just about any other source. Now, some of that might be because the perception of the members is the union is here for me. They're really fighting for me. And so when they tell me something, it's really good for me. And when unions sort of cross over into politics, then there's a lot more tension, particularly in unions like the building trades unions, where the membership is, I'm being generous here, fairly evenly split politically. But the opportunity to talk about these issues with a lot of union members, I think, is a very, very, very important one, because unions have sway and they are very good at clearly teaching people about important issues that really matter to their lives. And this is an issue that really matters to their lives. Chris, do you want to jump in on this? Go ahead.
The only thing I want to add is that I don't think anything's going to change. I mean, and I agree with you, and I think Michael raised this also. I think a lot of the unions have put out very good statements, and that's great. But I don't think things are going to change until we're in the streets. And I'm talking about in the streets locally, and I'm talking mass mobilizations, because right now there's a lot of folks who are not comfortable, and there's some really amazing work being done with tracking the ICE and with the apps, and that's great stuff. But until there are masses of people, whether it's local mobilizations or in Washington, in other major cities, because what happens is people will come out to those kinds of things, right, in solidarity. That won't necessarily or not necessarily comfortable with confronting ICE. It takes a particular kind of personality to be able to do that. And I have absolute respect for those folks that are doing that kind of organizing. But there's a lot of folks who are just not going to come out. But if they see that their neighbors are all going down to the big demonstration at the White House, for example, by the way, you know this as well, they've just fenced off Lafayette Park outside the White House. Now, they say this because they're working on it, but that's not why. They don't want anybody anywhere near the White House. And that's what's going on. But that's okay. We can still encircle it.
Yeah, there's been a lot of work on Lafayette Park since President Trump became president again. Okay, here's a second question, and we're still on the same topic, but this is now. I think this is going to be a hard one. So I'm curious to see what you guys do with this. Okay, can you explain to me? I don't think I gave that the right reading. Can you explain to me why the Border Patrol Union is standing in support of the violence that is occurring in Minneapolis? Don't we expect unions to be more humanitarian than that? Anybody want to take that's a pretty pointed question. But let me just say, I'll just say this. I'll give you a chance to think about what you want to say before I'll give you a little breathing room, because I'm a great moderator in that way. I like to make my guests to be comfortable. This is an issue not just with respect to the Border Patrol Union, but this is the sort of a sibling issue to what has been raised with respect to police unions. Yep. And there are some in the labor movement and beyond that feel that police officers should not have unions, because the police unions often, it is the perception, I don't know empirically whether this is true, but it is the perception that police unions often defend things that they should not be defending, like violations of civil liberties and wrong shootings and things that just are not good police work, and they defend it because their members expect them to defend them when things come up. Just as union, my son is a grievance adjuster for a union right now, and it's his job to defend his members, not a police union. Let me just hasten to add, because he would kill me if he heard me hinting at that. Oh my God, you don't know. Every Thanksgiving for the rest of my life, I'd be hearing about that. But so this is a sibling issue there. So it's not just the Border Patrol Union, but obviously right now, because Border Patrol is the leading contributor of violence, it's not just ICE. I mean, CBP is way out front. Their leader dresses like a 1930s fascist and talks like a 1930s fascist. And so they are sort of in the center. But the union, I've seen the president, Paul Perez, talking about his members and defending some of what has happened in Minneapolis. I don't want to overstate that. I've only seen one clip from him on Fox News. Okay, Michael, you were really eager to get in. I don't know if it made it better for you or worse for you than the way I just set it up.
No, helpful. So, I've reached out to that union. They haven't responded over the past few days. So, to just give some context, in 2022, AFGE and in ICE's union, they disaffiliated, and I don't believe ICE organized their own union, so ICE doesn't have a union. But the National Border Patrol Council is an affiliate of AFGE still. And obviously their statements, their positions on this issue couldn't be, any further from one another. I haven't gotten any kind of explanation or response from either of them on why this is. So, and the National Border Patrol Council, their unions, former president endorsed Trump in 2016 and 2020. He left in 2024 he was appointed ambassador of Chile. So they have just a kind of a long-standing their leadership with the Trump administration, and if you look on their Facebook page, they're all about Trump. They're very right wing, and I agree with kind of sentiments. Why isn't there any sort of labor solidarity? They were both an AFGE member was killed, and this is a union that is affiliated with AFGE. But I've gotten no explanation, and they don't want to address it. So, and unfortunately, until they actually address the issue, and I don't think, them going only on Fox News and Newsmax are going to, ask about it. It's going to be at least conveyed publicly or explained publicly why that is.
Yeah, I wonder if the comparative silence is sending a message. But when Perez comes out and speaks, he certainly is wholeheartedly in support of his membership. I want to put it politely, if you don't mind. Anybody else want to get in on the Border Patrol Union?
I would just say, I have to remember, and I see this with prison unions, police unions, it's true with the Border Patrol. If there are any members who do feel differently, the price they would pay for speaking out is very, very high, and there's a long history of that price. And so I think there's, in other unions, maybe you'd get verbally attacked or whatever, but when you turn against a police union or Border Patrol union or prison union, you're putting your life in your hands, and that's very, it's very difficult to do.
Yeah, absolutely true. But you might expect former members to speak out or former leaders to speak out. But I think, Michael's point was an important one. That this is the leadership here, I think, is accurately reflecting their membership, right? We're all for union democracy, but in this case, union democracy means you may very well have an extremely conservative, not just pro-Trump, but pro-immigration enforcement sentiment. I think it's probably silly to say maybe. I mean, almost certainly those are the kind of people who go into the Customs and Border Patrol. I would guess that the large majority of them fit in there. And so it creates an interesting situation.
Going back to the Texas Rangers. It's the Texas Rangers.
Yeah.
That's their history.
Go ahead, Chris.
Just one other, I think you've covered this very well, but one other thing that I've been just sort of thinking about as I've watched this, which is that I'm getting out my crystal ball again now, but I think a lot of folks in these various forces did not sign up for what they're doing now. I mean, most obviously the National Guards folks, but I even think people in the Border Patrol, did not sign up for harassing American civilians. And I think it's going to be interesting when some of those folks, either after they retire, I think stories are going to start coming out, because I think my guess is that when those folks go home at night and take off their battle armor, they're people like we are, right? And I think a lot of them are not comfortable with this. And I suspect there's going to be some changes. I think some stories are going to start to come out, not right away, but I predict that. I hope maybe it's just me hoping.
That's the most optimistic take I have seen on that issue. Okay, we have one more question. Actually, Kate, you kind of covered this, but let me give you a chance if you wanted to add anything. And if either Michael or Chris want to jump in, of course, you're welcome. And it's very simple. What's the latest on the huge nurses strike in New York City? Is there any hope it will be settled soon? Now, I saw some reporting that some of the issues have been resolved, but there are still some very big issues out there. And this strike has been going on for some time. I don't know the exact duration, but it's weeks.
2 weeks, I think. Yeah,
we're a couple of weeks now, I think. Kate, do we think that there's hope of settlement anytime soon, or are both sides pretty well entrenched?
I think a strike in a city where the mayor is walking the picket line with the workers, it's very different than it would be in another time. And the number of community members and other unions that have joined the strike, the rallies and the strike picket lines, I get a sense that the tide is shifting, but it's not going to be quick. And of course, this is a strike where the next at least another week is going to be bitter cold, and you have to, in healthcare, you have to stay on the picket line. You can't stop the strike, otherwise you have to give another 10-day notice. They have got to be there, and they've got to have people out on that line. But they seem to be doing a good job of holding their members together, and holding the members care about these issues, and the community cares about these issues. So I feel, maybe like Chris, maybe I'm being too optimistic. I don't know, but I get a sense that it's different, and I do believe it makes a difference that all these public officials are out there supporting the strike.
Yeah. So I think one of the great badges of honor that Mayor Mamdani is going to wear from his first year in office is that he was very harshly criticized, I believe, by one of the billionaire real estate people in New York City, but I may have gotten that wrong. It may be another another business leader, saying it's not the mayor's job to be on a picket line. It's his job to help to settle these strikes. It's like, I don't think that's what he thinks his job is. I'm pretty sure that's not where he thinks he's going to throw in his lot. So he's not a mediator, and it's not his job to settle this. There used to be an agency that was supposed to help settle these strikes, right? The Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service, but sadly eliminated by Donald Trump. All right, that is our last question. I just want to remind the audience, let me just say, live audience, if you're too shy to ask your questions here and have them read out in front of everybody while you're on, you can always send your questions to us by email to poweratwork@theburnscenter.org. That's the BURNES center.org. poweratwork@theburnscenter.org. And we will read them next time. Now, our next episode will be in exactly 2 weeks. And we'll have another panel coming in, but that panel would be delighted to answer your questions during overtime then. So we'll start with any questions that we receive by email, and then any live questions that we get during that episode. But let me thank our audience, thank our panel again. Michael, Kate, and Chris, thank you so much, not just for appearing, but also for staying with us for overtime. And audience, thanks for sticking with us for overtime as well. We'll see you again here on Power at Work very soon. Are you looking for more labor radio shows and podcasts? Well, look no further. Go to the Labor Radio Podcast Network. The network connects more than 200 radio shows and podcasts. To find more great labor content, go to www.laborradionetwork.org. Power at Work is there. You should be too.